Part 9. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 81. Old Lady Gu looked dazed. She didn't expect that she would become so popular. But she knew her two sons and knew that they were all people who would not do anything without profit. You are all vying to support me, so what about your father? Old Lady Gu asked. Old Master Gu pretended to be stupid. Mom, Dad has always liked my second brother and Nayuniu the most, and I can't compete with my second brother. Old Master Gu also echoed. Looking at the two sons, the old lady felt sad. The old lady just thought about it and understood the reason. The old man had a confused disease and couldn't help them with work. Although she was sick once, she was actually fine and could still help them. More importantly, by supporting her, they can still get filial piety from the second son on a daily basis. Even if she is sick, it doesn't matter. Anyway, they can ask the second son for medical expenses. Mom, the eldest son should take care of the family business and support his parents. Don't worry, I will definitely be filial to you in the future, Old Master Gu promised solemnly. He kept talking about keeping the family business, and almost said that he would take the biggest share of the family business. Your father and I have been together all our lives. Now that we have separated, we don't plan to separate. After saying this, Ms. Gu saw that her eldest son's face was visibly ugly. Mom, we are just taking care of each other separately. Our family only has this one house, so we will naturally live together when the time comes, the eldest son of the Gu family explained. The old lady felt that if she continued to argue, she would probably only get a sad result. Then she looked at the clan leader who was waiting on the side and said, "His uncle, my old man is confused now, I will take charge of his affairs." The clan leader of the Gu family nodded and said, "That should be the case." In today's family division, Ms. Gu deliberately sent Old Man Gu out. She didn't want to make the old man sad. Ms. Gu continued, "I thought about it yesterday. My old man and I will live with the second son in the future." As soon as these words came out, the faces of the eldest son of the Gu family and the third son of the Gu family changed. Especially for Gu Laoda, although he didn't want to take care of his father who was confused in his old age, if he didn't even take care of his mother, then he, the eldest son, would probably be criticized in the village. More importantly, if he didn't take care of his parents, he might not get the land for his parents' retirement, and he wouldn't even get any advantage in the division of the family property. Mom, you. Gu Laoda was interrupted by the old lady as soon as he opened his mouth. I know it's not easy for both of you. You and your wife have 3 children, and the third son, his wife has a big family behind him, Old Lady Gu said. She would not change her mind since she had made up her mind. At this point, she was very clear-headed. She naturally knew who among the 3 sons was truly filial. After watching the farce of the eldest and third sons, the old lady felt sorry that these 2 unpromising things would hardly get much care from the second son in the future, but she was also a person of flesh and blood. The second son was willing to give up the family property in order to let her and his father enjoy their old age. She couldn't bear to let the second son's efforts go to waste. As for the shabby family property, land, and cash at home, divide them into 4 equal parts, 1 for each of the 3 houses, and 1 for me and your father. Old Lady Gu made the final decision and said the division plan she had thought of long ago. Although Gu Mingda said that he didn't want anything, it was impossible for Old Lady Gu not to fight for him. Gu Laoda's face was extremely ugly at this time. Since his parents wanted to live with Gu Mingda in their old age, after they died, this quarter of the family property would naturally be left to the second son. Obviously, he was the eldest son and should have occupied the largest share of the family property, but now the person who got half of the family property was Gu Mingda. Gu Mingda just passed the examination for a scholar, and it was the time when he was in the limelight. Gu Laoda's jealousy in his heart could hardly be concealed. Clan leader Gu didn't pay much attention to the expressions of his two nephews, but agreed with old lady Gu at this time, the way my sister-in-law divides the family is fair. If everyone has no other ideas, just divide it this way. Gu Laeta looked back at his wife, and Chen Chunyua hurriedly winked at Uncle Chen. Lu Ernie was also hinting to her brother Lu Das Han. The two brothers from her mother's family spoke at the same time. But before they finished speaking, they were interrupted by a louder voice. "I have other ideas," Gu Mingda said loudly. The head of the Gu clan was very polite to Gu Mingda. After all, if you count carefully, there has not been a scholar in the Gu family for 30 or 40 years. "Since Mingda has an idea, then you speak first," the head of the Gu clan said in a gentle voice. The eyes of the eldest brother of the Gu clan darkened. He felt that the clan leader's appearance was so flattering that it was almost dazzling. He thought that Gu Mingda had an opinion because he wanted to share more of the family property. At this time, his dissatisfaction with his brother had reached its peak. Gu Mingda, as if he didn't see the unfriendly looks from his elder brother and third brother, took the initiative to say, "Uncle, Mother, I went to school at the age of 6, and I have been studying for 27 years. To be honest, I have been studying all these years and have almost never worked in the fields. Unlike my elder brother and third brother, they all followed their parents to work in the fields when they were teenagers. They never complained, but I feel very ashamed. When my elder brother was 15 years old, he sprained his ankle but didn't say a word. It was not until the wheat was harvested that we knew he was injured, when my third brother was 16 years old." Listening to Gu Mingda's detailed account of the contributions and sufferings that the elder and third brothers had made to the family over the years, the two brothers' originally restless hearts gradually calmed down. Gu Mingda sighed and said, "I have taken advantage of the family for so many years, and now I have passed the examination for a scholar. It is not good to continue to take advantage of the family. I don't want any of these family properties." As soon as these words came out, there was an uproar immediately. Everyone present was surprised, but Mrs. Gu looked calm. Whether Gu Mingda didn't want the family property was brought up by Mrs. Gu or Gu Mingda himself, the perception was very different. After all, what he voluntarily gave up was real money and property. The old Gu family had been in business for many years, and the brick house he lived in now was worth 20 or 30 taels of silver. What's more, the Gu family still has 12 acres of land. An acre of land is worth about 8 taels of silver, which is close to 100 taels of silver. The Gu family has 60 taels of silver in cash. With a casual calculation, Gu Mingda gave up 40 or 50 taels of silver on his face. Mrs. Gu knew that her second son had made up his mind, but she still pointed it out deliberately. "Second brother, although you have been studying these years, you are capable. Mom took stock last night and found that the money you gave to the family was more than 40 taels. You buy it every few days. Meet once, you will also buy clothes for the whole family during the holidays. Even our tofu recipe was brought back by you. My parents did not support you in vain." Gu Mingda can be humble, but Mrs. Gu can't let others really think that her second son is a freeloader and look down on him. Patriarch Gu and his two brothers-in-law were all shocked when they heard this. They knew that Gu Mingda was capable, but they didn't expect that he would be so successful. No matter how hard and tiring farming is, you can't just grow 40 taels of silver. The Gu family's total wealth is 60 taels of silver, 2/3 of which was contributed by Gu Mingda. Buying meat every now and then and buying clothes during the holidays are a big expense. It is said that Gu Mingda paid for the exam himself. At this time, they couldn't help but think about how good Gu Mingda can make money. At this time, Uncle Chen frowned and looked at his sister Chen Chunyua with a puzzled look. His eyes were almost like asking directly, "Why don't you hug this brother who makes money and force the old lady to separate the family?" First update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Mu Yun Shen Shen. Chapter 82. Chen Chunyua was also bitter. She had taken Gu Mingda's contribution for granted over the years. If the old lady hadn't mentioned it, she would have almost forgotten that her family had taken so much advantage. She didn't expect that a few angry words she said just to divide a few chickens would lead to a split of the family. Gu Mingda had already given up such a big benefit, and Gu Laeta couldn't fight for his parents anymore. After all, they were reluctant to give up so much wealth for an old man and a woman like Gu Mingda did. After a brief regret, the couple in the first room thought it over. Compared with other things, the 1/3 of the family property that was about to be obtained was more important than anything else. They happily calculated that they would have money to marry their sons in the future after taking the silver. But Lu Ernie's brain circuit was obviously different from that of ordinary people. Since the second brother and second sister-in-law have given up the family property, will they still want their share after their parents pass away? Listening to Lu Ernie's words, everyone present looked at her with surprise. After a brief moment of confusion, Chen Chunyua's eyes lit up instantly, and she immediately said, "The retirement land of my parents will naturally belong to our eldest branch in the future. After all, we are the eldest grandsons of the eldest branch." Lu Ernie was immediately unhappy and said, "Your eldest branch didn't support my parents, why do you have so much? They are all my parents' children and grandchildren, and our third branch can also take it." Gu Laeta and Gu Lao-san originally wanted their wives to stop making noises, but when they thought that the land was a real benefit, they didn't move in the end. Old Lady Gu looked at her two sons disappointedly, and then spoke out to stop the farce, "I'm not dead yet, and you're already calculating. Do you want me to die now to show you happiness?" Seeing that their mother was angry, Gu Laeta and Gu Lao-san stopped their wives. Seeing the two daughters-in-law eating in an ugly way, Old Lady Gu brought up the old matter again, "You haven't given me the money for medicine and travel expenses yesterday. Since you want to pretend to be dead, just deduct it from the money for the division of the family. My second brother is capable, and he is not short of money." Chen Chunyua muttered softly. Old Lady Gu glared at her and directly handed 2 taels and 5 cents of silver to Gu Mingda. Gu Mingda didn't want to take it, but seeing the stern eyes of his old mother, he took it and handed it to Zhang Yuniang. After a quarrel, they were finally able to continue the division of the family. All the family belongings were clearly listed. There were only a few rooms, and they were still divided as before. Gu Mingda took the initiative to say, "After the new year, we will move to the county to live." In this way, the 2 rooms originally lived in by the second room, the first room and the third room each got 1 room, and now the second room will live there until after the new year. The silver and money were counted, so it was easy to divide. But there was another quarrel when the land was divided. There are good and bad fields, and the area is also large and small. The first and third houses both want to eat more, and the brothers-in-law of the 2 families come into play at this time. Seeing the first and third houses quarreling, the 2 brothers, who originally had a deep relationship, were both angry for a few pieces of land. Gu Mingda and Gu Laotai were not happy at all. Zhang Yuniang held her husband's hand comfortingly. She knew very well that although her husband had been studying abroad for many years, he actually cared about his family in his heart. Otherwise, he would not have wasted his study time to enlighten his nephews and nieces. Several people crowded together noisily, and finally sorted it out after half an hour of arguing. When it was time to divide the property, the atmosphere between the first and third houses was wrong again. For a few broken pots and bowls, many old things were turned up. After arguing for a while, no one knew who figured it out first. Chen Chunyua and Lu Ernie suddenly turned their heads and pointed at Grandma Gu. "Mom, you and Dad are going to the city to enjoy life soon, what do you need these bowls and chopsticks for?" Not only did they not want to share their belongings with Grandma Gu, they even wanted to share the room where the old man and the old lady lived. "Mom, there are too many people in my family, and there is no room for them." Chen Chunyua wanted to occupy that room with confidence. Lu Ernie immediately said, I am still young, maybe I will be happy someday, and I may be as fertile as my mother. Where will the children lie then? Grandma Gu knew that in the next step, the two daughters-in-law would think that the retirement land should also be divided, and she slammed the table on the spot, a bunch of shallow-eyed things, no one can take my bowls and chopsticks. Even if I lock my room and let it get dusty, I will not share it with you. The two daughters-in-law could only curse in their hearts, biased. After so much noise, when it was getting dark, the rations were finally distributed, and only the last highlight was left. Mom, if our tofu shop is going to reopen, it must be run by our eldest wife. If it is really handed over to Lu Ernie, she doesn't know how to supplement her family, Chen Chunyua said first. Lu Ernie wanted to speak, but old lady Gu waved her hand. She was tired and said directly, whoever wants to open it can open it by themselves. I don't care. The first and third wives of the Gu family can make tofu. In fact, there are only some tools to share in the Gu family's tofu shop. The two sisters-in-law looked at each other, their eyes full of fighting desire. Okay, since the family has been divided, go cook, old lady Gu urged the three daughters-in-law. According to convention, after the division of the family, the relatives and friends who came to help should be invited to have a family division meal. Old lady Gu had already reserved the ingredients for the family division meal. After listening to the noise for an afternoon, the head of the clan and the two brothers-in-law were buzzing. At this time, they were all exhausted physically and mentally, and they were eager to go home and lie down after dinner. But Chen Chunyua and Lu Ernie did not move. Mom, the 6 chickens raised by Dad haven't been divided yet. Chen Chunyua took the initiative to remind her. Old Mrs. Gu glared at Chen Chunyua. She didn't expect that after so many things happened, Chen Chunyua would still have the nerve to divide the chickens raised by the old man. She immediately sank her face. Those are the chickens raised by your father for Niu Niu. Why should we divide them? Even if they are raised by Dad, aren't they our chickens? Lu Ernie has always been thick-skinned, and she also chimed in, hoping that her family can get the benefits. Chen Chunyua also nodded. Old Mrs. Gu said, these chickens didn't cost the family a penny, and didn't eat a grain of bran at home. How can you have the nerve to divide them? The chickens didn't eat the family's food, but Dad did. Over the years, Dad has spent a lot of money on medical treatment and medicine, Lu Ernie said. Maybe because she knew what kind of person Lu Ernie was, old Mrs. Gu didn't even get angry when she heard this. She stared at her two daughters-in-law with heavy eyes and said, you have been arguing for the whole afternoon and almost fought for more things. Have you forgotten something? Chen Chunyua and Lu Ernie were both confused. Old lady Gu said, what about the filial piety between me and the old man? We just separated, not severed our relationship. How much filial piety should you give us during the New Year and other festivals? You should also talk about it in front of everyone. Chen Chunyua and Lu Ernie were struck by lightning when they heard this. Second update. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 83. If possible, no one wants to see the hideous appearance of their loved ones. Gu Mingda looked away tiredly, lowered his head, and happened to see Niu Niu with her big eyes open, looking at the two sisters in surprise. We have nothing to do here, let's go out first, Gu Mingda said softly to Zhang Yuniang. Zhang Yuniang nodded, waved, and led the children out of the main room, then into the kitchen. Zhang Yuniang handled the ingredients skillfully, and Gu Mingda sat on the stove and lit the fire. He caught a glimpse of his little girl frowning slightly, as if she was stuck in something very puzzling, so he pulled her to his side. Who made our dear baby unhappy? Gu Mingda asked gently. Niu Niu hesitated for a moment and asked, Dad, Aren't the eldest aunt and the third aunt the same family? Why are they so noisy? It seems like they are going to fight. In the world of children, family members should help each other, just like Zhang Yuniang and Lu Xiaoru. Gu Mingde originally thought that by giving up the family property, the separation would be amicable, but he didn't expect that it would lead to the current situation. He didn't know whether it would leave a psychological shadow on the children. Separating a family means that we will no longer be a family. They have been quarreling all the time because they want to get more things for their husbands and children, so that their families can live easier in the future, Gu Mingde explained. Niu Niu still said, but I still think they are so fierce and scary. Zhang Yuniang had just finished processing a handful of vegetables. When she heard this, she asked, it's scary when they quarrel. When my mother quarrels and fights with others, do you also feel scary? Niu Niu immediately became anxious and said, my mother is not terrible. No matter what she does, she is the best and most beautiful mother in the world. Niu Niu likes her the most. Zhang Yuniang glanced at her daughter angrily. Niu Niu was afraid that she wouldn't believe it, so she added, Niu Niu knows it, Niu Niu understands it all. Even if my mother quarrels or fights with others, she still does it to protect her family. She is so amazing. After Niu Niu said this, a look of shame suddenly appeared on her face and she said, Dad, I understand what you said. The eldest aunt and the third aunt may look fierce and ugly when they are arguing, but they are actually very brave. Gu Mingde reached out and patted the soft top of the little girl's hair, and said, everyone has their own choices when living in this world. He deeply hated his elder sister-in-law and his third younger sister for making the old lady angry, but he would not do anything to them. He just wanted to take his parents far away from the circle of right and wrong, because they also had their own difficulties. People are very complex creatures. Gu Mingde would mentally blame his eldest brother and third brother for their inaction towards his parents, but he also remembered that when he was 10 years old, his eldest brother walked more than 10 miles to deliver food to him. He remembered that every time the third brother who always keeps good things and shares them with him. His eldest brother was once a responsible brother like Gu Yan, and his third brother was once a sensible brother like Gu Zhao. Niu Niu nodded in understanding, and after a moment, she suddenly asked, Dad, why don't you distinguish those things? The little girl asked this not as an accusation, but simply because she didn't understand. Even though Gu Mingde had already explained the reasons in front of others, those long arguments were still in the dark to Niu Niu. Because Dad has got enough from home, and Dad is not short of money. Your uncle and third uncle have a harder time, so they give in. Besides, Dad also got a lot of other things, Gu Mingde said. Emotions and interests are intertwined. Gu Mingde is not short of money, and he also has his own way of making money, so he can easily preserve the brotherhood. What? The little girl was puzzled. She looked at her father up and down. She could see flowers on him, but not much else. Gu Mingde was amused by his daughter's cute look, and patiently explained, Dad has gained a good reputation, and no amount of money can buy it back. Niu Niu lowered her head and thought for a moment, then gritted her teeth and said, I don't know what reputation is, but Dad thinks it's very important, so it must be good stuff. Niu Niu will tell her grandpa, Niu Niu won't eat chicken legs anymore, those 6 chicken, if you want it, and third aunt can take it. After the little girl said this, her face was still full of reluctance. It was obvious that this decision was extremely difficult for her. Gu Mingde's heart softened and he said, good boy, if you don't want to let go, forget it. You are still young and can be a child who does whatever you want. Niu Niu likes to hear adults call her good baby very much. This makes her feel that she is their cherished treasure and an extremely important existence. Niu Niu is really reluctant to give up, but Niu Niu wants fame and wants them to stop arguing, Niu Niu said with her little face raised. Gu Mingde didn't know what to say for a moment. Mrs. Gu suddenly walked in and said with a face on her arm, you are not allowed to give it to them. You want everything. Why don't they go to heaven? Behind her were Chen Chunyua and Lu Ernie, who walked in like quails with their necks hunched, and it was obvious that they had already separated. Yun Niang, you have been busy all day. Take the children to take a rest and let them cook. Mrs. Gu looked at Gu Mingda again and said, your uncle has something to do with you. Gu Mingda got up and left. Zhang Yuniang didn't ask about caring for the elderly and planned to leave with Niu Niu, but Mrs. Gu took Niu Niu's hand and led the little girl to the backyard. Second brother and sister, there is not much water in the water tank. Can you go to the entrance of the village to pick up a load? Chen Chunyua suddenly asked. Zhang Yuniang understood the character of her eldest sister-in-law. Every time it was her turn to cook, she would find thousands of reasons to order others to work. The person she commanded before was Gu Dia. She did this today, probably because she felt that the division of the family accounted for the largest share, and felt that the second house was a dough that could be easily kneaded. Zhang Yuniang was almost laughing with anger, thinking that this person really remembered to eat but not to be beaten, and got a little sweet, so he started shaking. Zhang Yuniang didn't indulge her before, and she would not indulge her now, so she casually said, I will help you call big brother. Chen Chunyua was anxious. Her husband was still in the main room to entertain guests. Normally, it was fine, but now there were outsiders. How could he be asked to work? Wouldn't it make him look inferior? Sister-in-law. Wait, Chen Chunyua hurriedly stopped the person. Zhang Yuniang stopped and looked at her with a smile. Chen Chunyua laughed dryly and said, I was wrong. There is enough water in the water tank. You don't need to pick it. As soon as Zhang Yuniang left, Chen Chunyua couldn't help but snorted and said, a woman without the support of her natal family really thinks she is a dish. When Gu Laoer becomes rich, he will be the first to divorce her. After hearing this, Lu Ernie nodded vigorously and said, yes, the most important thing for us women is to have the support of our natal brothers. When Chen Chunyua saw her answering, she rolled her eyes on the spot. The two of them had been arguing for an afternoon, and it was impossible for them to reconcile immediately. She choked back on the spot, you subsidize your natal family every day. If you don't support them, where can you pick up ready-made money? Seeing that the two were about to quarrel again, Mrs. Gu, who was staying in the backyard, heard the sound of fighting in the kitchen and shouted directly, if you don't cook well, no one will eat tonight. Chen Chunyua and Lu Ernie's brothers were still waiting for dinner. Even if they were very angry, they could only stop temporarily. At this time, in the backyard, Nayunia watched helplessly as her grandmother, who had just displayed her might, turned around with tears all over her face. First update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 84. Grandma, don't cry. Nayunia carefully handed over the handkerchief she carried with her. The house was in a mess, and the little girl's mood was inevitably affected. Grandma Gu wiped her face with the handkerchief, and stopped crying. Instead, she cursed casually, two people who don't know how to appreciate blessings. God feeds them but they don't even know to open their mouths. Nayunia didn't know that Grandma was scolding her two sons, she just thought she was scolding the two people in the kitchen, and quickly covered her ears to avoid listening. Old Lady Gu was startled, and gently pulled the little girl's hand off, and asked worriedly, why are you covering your ears? Are you uncomfortable? Are your ears itchy? Nayunia shook her head and said, a gentleman should not listen to what is not proper. My elder brother taught me. Old Lady Gu didn't quite understand this sentence, but she didn't stop her from praising, Nayunia is really obedient. Your elder brother is well educated. It's right to listen to him more. Nayunia's mouth curved up, and she said, Dad's knowledge is the best at home. Dad got the first place in the scholar exam. No one else can pass him. Dad is very good. The one being praised was her own son, and old lady Gu was also proud, saying, "Yes, your dad has the best knowledge. I will listen to him in the future." Old lady Gu looked at Niuniu with relief. Every time she saw this child, her mood would get better, and now was no exception. After letting Niuniu accompany her for a while, old lady Gu felt that the heaviness in her heart seemed to gradually dissipate. "My dear, is your dad really planning to move to the county?" old lady Gu asked softly again. Although Niuniu didn't know about this decision in advance, since Gu Mingda said so, she nodded vigorously. "Grandma, since daddy said it, it must be true. He won't lie to you." Old lady Gu looked around the courtyard. This is where she has lived for most of her life. She was really reluctant to leave suddenly. More importantly, she was a country girl and had only been to the city a few times. She was away from her familiar environment and went there. She was afraid of embarrassing her son and being laughed at by others. She was inevitably timid. She couldn't show this fear in front of her son and daughter-in-law, so she could only talk to her granddaughter. "When we get to the county, we have to buy firewood, and everything costs money. The expenses are too high. Otherwise, I'd better stay in the countryside. You can come back to see me occasionally," old lady Gu said. Niuniu tilted her little head and said, "There's no shortage of money at home." "Huh?" Old lady Gu was stunned. Niu said, "Dad said that he didn't fight with his uncle and uncle because he didn't lack money." "Grandma, I'll tell you something in secret." Grandma Gu leaned over to listen. "We opened a shop in the county," Niu whispered. Grandma Gu's eyes widened in shock, and then she calmed down. She looked at Niu suspiciously and said, "My dear, did you remember it wrong?" Niu was anxious and said, "Grandma, I remembered it right. The shop is on Yuanbao Street. It is now managed by Aunt Lu. Aunt Lu is my mother's godsister. The shop sells braised food." Seeing the child's voice getting louder and louder, Grandma Gu hurriedly covered her mouth and said softly, "Okay, Grandma believes you. You can't tell others, okay?" Niu nodded. Grandma Gu didn't believe it at first, but the child said more and more details, and now she is half believing and half doubting. Children are not sure about their mouths. If the first and third wives know about this, I'm afraid they will be angry again. Who knows what trouble they will cause. "You are a little person, but you know a lot," old lady Gu praised. Niu likes to be praised the most. Hearing this, she puffed up her little chest and said with a little pride, "Grandma, I bought the recipe for the braised food." Old lady Gu asked carefully, and after hearing the whole story, she couldn't help but be surprised. "Although I bought the recipe, thanks to my father's cleverness, otherwise we would have thought it was a piece of waste paper," Niu said shyly. Old lady Gu was surprised to hear such a situation, and couldn't help asking, "You know to bargain when buying things from an old beggar. Such a little kid, you are not afraid at all." Niu didn't think much, and replied casually, "Grandma, what's there to be afraid of? Mom is by my side. She loves me so much and will protect me." Old lady Gu thought of her own entanglement and asked again, "Niu is afraid to follow your parents to the capital city?" Although Niu is young, she remembers the happy memories very clearly. "When I first entered the city, I was a little scared. I didn't dare to look around. Some people laughed at us, but my father told us that if we wanted to look, we should look openly." Old lady Gu listened to her granddaughter talking about her experience of entering the city, and looked at the little girl's face full of security. For some reason, her heart also settled down. She couldn't help thinking that Niu, who was only 5 years old, was not afraid. She had lived for so many years and followed her own son to the city to enjoy happiness. What else should she be afraid of? Niu stretched out her little hand and put it on old lady Gu's hand, saying, "Grandma, every time you frown and are unhappy, your parents are very worried. In the future, when you enter the county, Nayunio promises to be well behaved and will never make you unhappy. Hearing this, old lady Gu's heart softened and said, our good girl is the best girl in the world. How could she make grandma angry? Gu Mingda didn't know the conversation between the grandma and grandson. He just saw that his mother's mood had obviously improved a lot during dinner, and he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. When his mother was free, Gu Mingda took the time to tell her about the shop in the city. That's a shop that Yuniang opened with someone else. Yuniang holds 30% of the shares, and Nayuniu holds 30% of the shares. Because I didn't use the family's money, I didn't tell you before, Gu Mingda said apologetically. Old Mrs. Gu had heard about it from Nayuniu before, so she was not surprised at this time. She just said, the recipe belongs to Nayuniu, and it shouldn't have been mixed into the public. Gu Mingda was afraid that the old lady would be scared after moving to another place, so he said, there are many things to do in the shop, and I will have to trouble you to help. When old Mrs. Gu heard that she had to help, she immediately cheered up, okay, it's good to have something to do. After the separation, the atmosphere at home did not improve much. The friction between the first and third rooms continued, and they all tried their best to make a big move in selling tofu. The friendship between the children was not affected, but they still didn't like the weird atmosphere at home and didn't like to stay at home all day. There is a big tree at the entrance of the village, and the children in the village like to play hide and seek there. 10, 9, 8, 3, 2, 1, third brother, sister Dia, I'm here to find you. Nayuniu smiled, and just as she put down her hands covering her eyes, she was so scared that she almost jumped up. But Zhang Guangzhou quickly covered her mouth, and seeing that there was no one around, he picked up the little girl and ran away. Second update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 85. Zhang Guangzong's departure with the child was not smooth. Nayuniu is only 5 years old and is not heavy at all. Zhang Yuniang and Gu Mingda usually hold the baby very easily. But Zhang Guangzong had just experienced a serious cold and was severely beaten by his concubine's man. Now he was not only weak, but also had many wounds on his body that were not healed. The originally light and airy little girl now felt as heavy as a mountain in his hands, and it was also difficult to leave along the route he had planned. This road he had walked several times suddenly became full of dangers. One moment he almost fell into a pit, another moment he almost tripped over a haystack, or almost hit his head on a sharp stone. After arriving at the destination with difficulty, Zhang Guangzong felt as if he had lost half his life. He deliberately chose a good place, which was remote, quiet, and inaccessible. Nayuniu, I'm Dad, do you remember Dad? Zhang Guangzong tried to pretend to be kind. But what he got was Niu's defensive eyes. The little girl stepped back cautiously. Zhang Guangzong grabbed her shoulders, forced her not to move, and said, I picked you up from the wild, have you forgotten? Facing the person she was most afraid of in the past, Niu almost cried out of fear, but she still managed to calm down and shouted to him, Uncle. Zhang Guangzong's face changed instantly, I'm not your uncle, I'm your father. I'm your father. The little girl was really scared and her eyes turned red. Seeing this situation, Zhang Guangzong took a deep breath and said, they must have told you something nonsense. Although they bought you for 5 taels of silver, I am still your father and you are my daughter. You are my daughter. Although Nayuniu is still very afraid of Zhang Guangzong, when she heard this, she felt infinite courage in her heart and retorted on the spot, I am not your daughter, I am the daughter of Gu Mingda and Zhang Yuniang. Zhang Guangzong became visibly angry, his eyes spitting fire, ungrateful. If it weren't for me, you would have died a long time ago. You think I can buy out my kindness to you with 5 taels of silver? I tell you, in your dreams, you are mine daughter, you must encourage me. You must help me become a scholar. Zhang Guangzhou had a very bad time during this period, and the successive blows had made him a little confused. He had been thinking about climbing up, but unexpectedly he heard the women in the village talking. They compared the current situation of Zhang Guangzhou and Gu Mingde, and became more and more convinced of Niuni Wangjia's previous view. In fact, this was not the first time Zhang Guangzhou heard these commonplace words, and he usually didn't take them seriously. After all, he had money, leisure, and a comfortable life at that time. Now that Zhang Guangzhou had been blackmailed several times in succession and fell into poverty, he traced his origins and actually believed the Wang family story. After all, his life was getting worse and worse, starting from the time he sold his daughter. He didn't know where he heard it, saying that he should be kind to people with a prosperous family, otherwise he would easily lose money and invite disaster. Zhang Guangzhou also knew that he could not return to his previous life by his own ability, so he began to think of taking evil ways to bring back his daughter of the Wang family. At this time, Niu Niu was frightened to tears by his crazy appearance. She shook her head wildly, "I'm not your daughter. I'm not." When Zhang Guangzhou heard this, he became angry again. He controlled his emotions with difficulty and did not slap Niu Niu in the face. "White-eyed wolf, I have raised you for 5 years. Gu Mingde and Zhang Yuniang have only raised you for how long? If you don't please me, I will kill you." Niu Niu was very scared when she heard this, but she still didn't want to be Zhang Guangzhou's daughter. She hesitated again and again, closed her eyes, and said silently, "I hope." Before Niu Niu finished her words, she suddenly heard a gust of wind and a small stone hit Zhang Guangzhou. "Let go of my sister, you big bad guy." Gu Zhao rushed over like a small cannonball and bumped directly into Zhang Guangzhou. This collision shouldn't have posed much of a threat to Zhang Guang, but he was now a weak adult and was knocked to the ground by the angry little fat man on the spot. Niu Niu took advantage of this gap and immediately hid aside. Gu Dia stepped forward and threw a handful of sand in his right hand towards Zhang Guangzhou's eyes. After doing all this, Gu Dia stretched out his left hand and pulled Gu Zhao up. "Let's go." Gu Dia stood behind the palace guard and ran back quickly, protecting his younger brothers and sisters, and rushed straight back to his yard without stopping. Zhang Yuniang glanced at the 3 children in surprise. When her eyes fell on Niu Niu's red and swollen eyes and messy hair, her expression suddenly changed. "Mom, Uncle Zhang just arrested Niu Niu." Gu Zhao stumbled and talked about what just happened. Zhang Yuniang hurriedly grabbed Niu Niu and looked her up and down carefully. After confirming that the little girl was just frightened and had no injuries, she breathed a sigh of relief. Niu Niu snuggled into her mother's arms with fear on her face, her tears falling like broken beads. Although Gu Zhao and Gu Dia were both children, looking at Zhang Yuniang's solemn face and the look of some kind of storm brewing in her eyes, they couldn't help but shudder with fear. Zhang Yuniang forced a smile on her face and told Dia and Gu Zhao, "You are playing in the yard and don't go out. If you encounter Uncle Zhang when you go out in the future, just stay away." After getting nods from the 2 children, Zhang Yuniang carried Niu Niu into her house. Gu Mingde, who was studying in the house, was shocked when he saw his wife and daughter acting strangely. Zhang Yuniang was afraid of scaring the child, so she asked gently, "Niu Niu, tell me, what does your Uncle Zhang want after he captured you?" When Gu Mingde heard this, his eyes instantly burst into terrifying anger. Niu Niu whispered, "He asked me to call him dad and let me continue to be his daughter, saying that I was an ungrateful person. Mom, I don't want to leave you. I want to be your daughter." The couple was heartbroken when they saw the little girl burst into tears. Zhang Yuniang immediately hugged her daughter and patted her gently in her arms. "Niu Niu, don't be afraid. No one can take you away from your parents. You are your parents' daughter, and no one can take you away." The couple coaxed her for a long time before the little girl fell asleep with tears all over her face. "I'll go to the county tomorrow," Gu Mingde said softly. Zhang Yuniang seemed to realize something and asked, "What are you going to do?" Na Yuniao likes to eat sui and su, and only the pastry shop in the county sells it, Gu Mingda said. Zhang Yuniang looked down at her daughter, who was frowning with fear even when she was asleep, and thought her husband went to the city just to buy cakes to cheer her up. But after a moment of silence, Gu Mingda said with a frosty face, "I thought too simply before." First update. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 86. When Gu Mingda was in Fukan, he did pry out many Zhang Guangzong secrets from Xiao Cai through shopkeeper Zheng. Zhang Guangzong does have a lot of black spots, but many of them cannot be made into an issue because there is no evidence. The biggest lawsuit against him was not about abducting his nephew, but about cheating in a child test. The childbirth examination was held in this county and was presided over by the county magistrate. Because of the fraud in the childbirth examination, it was not Zhang Guangzong who was involved, but many people in the county government. If this matter is really exposed, maybe half of the people in Guang'an County government will be deeply involved. More importantly, this incident occurred 4 years ago during an examination during the term of the previous county magistrate. The previous county magistrate has already been promoted. If nothing unexpected happens, the county magistrate who takes over will probably not hold the previous officials accountable. Gu Mingda sighed in his heart. He thought that the husband of Tofu Zishi could teach Zhang Guangzong a lesson, but he didn't expect that this man was rough-skinned and thick-bodied. He didn't want to expose the fraud in the imperial examination before, but now it seems that he must do so. His hatred for Zhang Guangzong has reached its peak, and he has reached the point where he has to kill them all. "Ms. Sir, is it dangerous?" Zhang Yuniang asked in a low voice. She has no feelings for her younger brother Zhang Guangzong, and is even more afraid that her husband will involve her in this matter. Gu Mingda held his wife's hand and said softly, "Don't worry, I have a sense of discretion in my heart. If things don't work out, we will move to the county as soon as possible and hide Niu Niu so that Zhang Guangzong cannot find her." He is not the kind of impulsive person who insists on fighting for success, so he plans to go to the county to play drums first. Gu Mingda took another hoe and dug out a jar of wine buried under the roots of a tree in the backyard. Early the next morning, before dawn, Gu Mingda set out for the county. The rest of the Gu family believed that Gu Mingda was going to the county to buy New Year's goods, but they didn't think about Zhang Guangzong. Second housing is really developed. The New Year's goods in the town are not good enough, so we have to go to the county to buy them, Chen Chunyua said sourly. Lu Ernie heard this and said, "The things in the county should be better, but I don't know if we can get a share of the things we bought this year." Before the family was separated, they were extremely sure that they had their own share, but now they are not so sure. Chen Chunyua quickly put away the work at hand and said, "Let's see where Da Ya went crazy again." She used this as an excuse and ran into the room while pulling Boss Gu to mutter. Lu Ernie also returned to her home and saw Gu Xiao and Gu Xiaobao, who had just returned from playing wildly outside. As soon as Gu Xiaobao saw his mother, he grinned and started howling, "Mom, my sister won't let me play with Shitu and the others." Lu Ernie also maintained her usual patriarchal character. She didn't even listen to her daughter's explanation and began to accuse, "How did you become a sister? Do you go out to play or take care of your younger brother? When you play, you become so wild." Sighed. Gu Xiao couldn't help but want to roll her eyes when she heard these cliché words. Lu Ernie couldn't tolerate her daughter, so she slapped her hard and scolded, "You stinky girl, you don't understand any rules, and you don't look like a girl's family at all. As a sister, you have to take care of your younger brother. I will count on you when you get married. My brother will support you." Gu Xiao replied perfunctorily, I know. Lu Ernie looked around, lowered her voice and said, last time, you ate all the cakes your second uncle gave you, and your brother didn't even have to eat them. If he gives you something this time, you take it back first, give it to me, you know. When the younger brother heard this, he waved his fists and said, sister is bad. Second uncle is stingy. I only give it to my sister but not me. Gu Xiao pressed down her younger brother's fist and said, Xiaobao, why are you so stupid? My second uncle was generous. You were sleeping when he gave you cakes, and my mother secretly sent the bag of cakes that belonged to you to your uncle's house. Well, the person you should hate is your uncle, who even robs children of their belongings. This was the first time Gu Xiaobao heard about this. For a 3-year-old boy, one bite was as big as the sky. Tears quickly accumulated in his eyes, and he looked at Lu Ernie accusingly, Mom! Give me back my pastries. I want to eat them. Lu Ernie felt a big headache. She didn't want to be resented by her own son, so she said on the spot, your sister ate the cakes given by your second uncle alone. Your sister often snatches food from your mouth. If you believe it, I still believe you, elder sister. Gu Xiaobao trusted his mother closely and was really confused at this time. Gu Xiao said from the side, hasn't my mother lied to you often? How come you are still fooled by her? Lu Ernie looked at her daughter as if she were an enemy. She couldn't understand why her daughter couldn't be more sensible and why she had to go against her in everything. Lu Ernie has been brainwashed by Mrs. Lu for many years. She doesn't think there is anything wrong in helping her mother's family. In her opinion, if you have good things, you have to send them back. Only when her brothers are well can she be well. Mom likes my uncle's cousin more than you, Gu Xiao said to her younger brother. Lu Ernie couldn't bear it anymore, slapped her in the face, and cursed, smelly girl, you have already ruined your moral character at such a young age. Who taught you to say these things? Gu Xiao was stunned and immediately let out a sharp explosion. Grandmother! This wasn't the first time she had been beaten, she had already formed muscle memory, and she immediately found someone to support her when this happened. Lu Ernie didn't panic at all this time, but said, it's useless to ask for your milk. We are all separated, and she can't control so much. Gu Xiao didn't believe it and rushed into the backyard quickly. The little girl had a shrill voice, and she attracted the attention of the whole family after a few shouts. Stinky girl, even if you scream until your throat is broken today, I will punish you, Lu Ernie shouted behind her. Old Mrs. Gu protected her granddaughter behind her and asked with a sullen face, what are you doing? Grandma, last time my second uncle came back, he gave each of us a bag of cakes. Mother gave my brother's bag to my uncle and lied to my brother that my second uncle didn't give him any. My brother felt very wronged and said at home that my second uncle was stingy, Gu Xiao said in front of everyone. Lu Ernie didn't have time to stop it at all, and a woman's voice came from behind her. Third sister-in-law, we sent the wrong gift to your third room. Zhang Yuniang's face was extremely ugly. Lu Ernie explained haltingly, no, you misunderstood, second sister-in-law. Chen Chunyua on the side really smiled like a flower. It was not certain whether Gu Mingda brought them New Year gifts this time, but based on Lu Ernie's performance, Chen Chunyua felt that if Gu Mingda really brought back New Year gifts, he would not give them to the third room. Chen Chunyua felt that her chance had come. In order to get more benefits, she said shamelessly, second brother's wife, some people are just hard to keep. No matter how many benefits you give her, they will still say bad things behind her back. I am different. I remember every little bit of kindness in my heart. Gu Mingda didn't know that the house was in chaos again in just half a day. He specially brought New Year gifts and articles that he had prepared long ago to visit County Magistrate Wu again. Second update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Mu Yun Shen Shen. Chapter 87. Gu Mingde was ready to break Zhang Guangzong's case with blood. But his visit to Magistrate Wu this time had some twists and turns. The first person he saw was not Magistrate Wu, but Master Chen. Zongde, the county magistrate is troubled by his official business. I'm afraid he won't have time to spare today. If you have anything important, I will report it as soon as possible, Master Chen said. Gu Mingde's nickname was Zongde, which was the name given to him by his teacher when he was admitted to Tongsheng. Master Chen and Gu Mingde are also very familiar with each other, and their words are very clear. Seeing Master Chen's anxious face, Gu Mingde was moved and asked, "Mr. Chen, is there anything I can do to help? Just say it and don't be polite to me." After hearing this, Mr. Chen hesitated for a moment and then said, "Zongde, you are not an outsider, so I just said that there was news suddenly from above that old accounts need to be checked. Now that the new year is approaching, the Yamen is short of manpower and one person is required. When they were together, I didn't go home for several days." Gu Mingde, who has always been transparent and mellow, said, "That's a lucky coincidence. I was worried about how to repay the kindness of the county magistrate." Although Master Chen really wanted Gu Mingde to help, he did not dare to make the decision without authorization. After going in to report to Magistrate Wu, he happily led Gu Mingde around and around into a room in the back office. The back office has always been the residence of Magistrate Wu and his family, and it was enough to surprise Gu Mingde when it suddenly turned into an office. After entering, Gu Mingde only saw that the spacious hall in the past was now full of piles. He looked around and saw only a tall account book and exhausted faces. It is obviously very busy, but not all the scribes in the Yamen are here, about half of them are not here. There are also several literate government officials in the house. Gu Mingde couldn't help but think that he would rather use the government officials to make up the number than find the other half of the clerks who were not present. Obviously it was not convenient for the other half to know about this. Those who didn't come happened to be close to the former county magistrate. Magistrate Wu sat at the main seat with a solemn expression. From time to time, someone would bring a ledger to him, and he would nod or shake his head after reading it. Master Chen first took Gu Mingde to see Magistrate Wu. Magistrate Wu was very busy and didn't even have time to talk, but he looked at Gu Mingde with a closer look. Master Chen had another table brought in, along with a stack of account books. "Zongde, please take a look at these accounts first. If you notice any problems, tell me directly," Master Chen warned. Gu Mingde nodded. He knew what he was here to do. If he wanted Magistrate Wu to go against the conventions of the officialdom, at least he had to become one of Magistrate Wu's. Although the relationship between them was okay before, they were not close enough. Gu Mingde picked up an account book and took a look at it. He suddenly realized something. Then he took a general look at the pile of account books on the table. Gu Mingde suddenly had some kind of guess in his heart. He was still not sure, so he went to Master Chen with the problematic page in the first account book. Master Chen took it and took a look at it. After calculating with an abacus for a while, he nodded, "There is indeed a vacancy of 5 taels of silver." Master Chen took out a brand new book and wrote something on it. Gu Mingde glanced at it seemingly unintentionally, and saw that the numbers on the page had accumulated to thousands of taels. "Sir, are you going to check the taxes of the past 20 years this time?" Gu Mingde asked. Master Chen shook his head and said, "It's not that long, probably the land tax from the 12th to the 18th year of Fenqi." Gu Mingde paused slightly when he heard this. From the 12th to the 18th year of Fenqi, this time happened to be the term of office of the former magistrate Go County. Gu Mingde returned to his seat, pretending to be nonchalant, and continued to look through the accounts. He worked hard like everyone else in the room, devoting himself wholeheartedly to this matter, lighting lamps and boiling wax with them, and there was nothing strange about it. "Why do we suddenly have to go forward to check the accounts, and the time is so urgent, and we don't even take a break during the new year?" Gu Mingde casually asked the clerk sitting at the next table. When people are tired, their brains move slower. The clerk said casually, looking at the previous accounts, someone is probably going to deal with the previous county magistrate. After saying this, he felt a little regretful. This matter was just his speculation based on Magistrate Wu's actions, so why did he say it so carelessly? Zonged, please forget what I just said, the scribe said softly to Gu Mingde. Gu Mingde didn't even raise his head, still staring at the account book in front of him, and said, I'm sorry, what did you just say? I accidentally got distracted. The scribe felt relieved. He was afraid that Gu Mingde was trying to trick him, so he asked, what were you thinking about when you were distracted just now? Hearing this, Gu Mingde put down the account book and said with a smile, I thought of my little daughter. Her legs were numb and she told me that her legs were crazy. The clerk originally just asked casually, but when he heard this, he couldn't help laughing and said, children are always full of strange ideas. Gu Mingde nodded and said, only a little girl would think that. My youngest son would only say that someone stabbed his leg with a needle. When the clerk saw that Gu Mingde looked like a slave to his daughter, he became more and more convinced that Gu Mingde had not heard what he just said, and he felt reassured. Gu Mingde's mood was very complicated when he spoke. Now he was sure that the current magistrate Wu had probably received an order from his superiors to violate official customs and take action against the former magistrate Go. Gu Mingde couldn't help but sigh that he was so lucky. He almost dozed off on the pillow, as if there was a pair of invisible hands controlling everything behind his back. Could it be that it went so smoothly because it was related to Niuniu? Gu Mingde couldn't help but think. His luck has always been bad. Otherwise, a scholar would not have been able to take the exam for so many years. But this matter still needs him to continue to promote. Gu Mingde had been busy in the county for 3 days and had finally finished sorting out the old accounts. He took a look at the data recorded by Master Chen and saw that it had reached an astonishing 30,000 taels of silver. Even so, Magistrate Wu still seemed dissatisfied. The county magistrate was dissatisfied, so the master also became unhappy. No matter how unhappy you are, you still have to eat. Firstly, it is approaching the new year, and secondly, everyone should be well rewarded for their hard work for several days. Magistrate Wu held a special banquet in Haoye, and Gu Mingde was also among them. Yellow rice wine. Magistrate Wu was very surprised when he looked at the jar of yellow rice wine that Gu Mingde brought over, and then said, when I first came to Guang'an County, I heard someone said that there used to be a kind of yellow rice wine in the county, which had a mellow taste. It's quite good, but it's a pity that the winemaker has stopped making wine for many years, so I didn't have the opportunity to taste it. Gu Mingde chuckled lightly, cupped his hands and said, the winemaker you are talking about is my father. He is old and can't remember how to make wine. This wine is from him. More than 10 years ago, I was admitted to Tongshan University. It was brewed every year. I originally expected to drink it after I was admitted to the scholar examination, but unfortunately I failed to live up to expectations and struggled for several years before I was lucky enough to pass the examination. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 88. Wu County Magistrate did not expect that there was such a connection between the two, and was immediately surprised. He took a look at the seemingly ordinary jar of wine in the New Year gift sent by Gu Mingde, and sighed, in this case, this jar of wine is a top-notch product, isn't it? There were many wine lovers present, and they all looked at the jar of wine with fiery eyes. The lid of the wine jar was opened, and everyone could only smell a fascinating aroma of wine. Looking at the clear wine liquid, they felt as if they were drowning in it. Good wine, Wu County Magistrate praised. Just after tasting it, he felt that the past few decades had been lived in vain. No jar of wine had ever fascinated him so much, and he finally understood why the legend of yellow rice wine was still circulating in Guang'an County after more than 10 years. He couldn't help but regret it, and secretly thought that he shouldn't have brought this wine to the table. If he had known that this wine was so fascinating, he should have secretly kept it and tasted it slowly when he had time. But now that things have come to this, no matter how precious the wine is, County Magistrate Wu can only bear the pain and share it with everyone. Gu Mingde said softly, "I am a dull student. Thanks to your guidance, I have made some progress. My father has always hoped that I can achieve academic success. If he can wake up, I am afraid he will want to offer you a glass of wine." County Magistrate Wu had just tasted the good wine. Hearing this, his whole body softened visibly. He looked at Gu Mingde with a little love in his eyes and said in a gentle voice, "Zongde, you don't have to be so modest. In fact, you have done a good job in writing. If nothing unexpected happens, you should be able to get a Juren title next year." Gu Mingde's expression was slightly excited, as if he was greatly encouraged. Most of the people at the table were scholars, and they were always very touched by this topic. To be honest, my family has always hoped that I can achieve academic success, but unfortunately, I am dull and can't make any progress after passing the Tongsheng exam. A clerk couldn't help but sigh. Before Gu Mingde could say what he wanted to say, the topic inexplicably turned to the examination for Tongsheng again, as if with divine help. Perhaps it was because the yellow rice wine that had been buried in the soil for more than 10 years was too strong. After a few cups, another clerk started talking nonsense. "At least you passed the examination for Tongsheng. I studied for so many years, but I didn't even pass the examination for Tongsheng, even in the years when it was easiest to pass." Although the clerks are called officials, they are actually clerks. There is a huge difference between these two words. Ordinary clerks seem to have some power, but in fact they are just soldiers who can read and write in the yamen. The years when it is easiest to pass? Which year are you talking about? Someone couldn't help asking. Some clerks in the yamen are born smart, and their words and deeds are flawless, while others are casual and have flaws all over their bodies. Now, the person who took the opportunity to complain was obviously a person who spoke without restraint. Which years could it be? Of course, it was the years when Lord Go presided over the Tongsheng exam. At that time, anyone could pass the exam. It's a pity that such people showed their true colors in the academy exam. The speaker was unintentional, but the listener was interested. After County Magistrate Wu and Master Chen looked at each other, Master Chen seemed to have received some instructions and said casually, "The Tongsheng exam is so important, who dares to play tricks on such a thing? Brother Wang, are you drunk?" The drunkard couldn't stand hearing such words, and immediately said, "I'm not drunk." It was an undisclosed secret in those years. Whoever had money could become a Tongsheng. It's a pity that my family didn't have money, otherwise I would have passed the exam. Before Gu Mingde could reply, the drunken clerk suddenly pointed at him, You too." Everyone present was stunned, and their eyes changed when they looked at Gu Mingde. "Brother Wang, I passed the Tongsheng exam in the 10th year of Fenqi," Gu Mingde explained. The drunkard said, "I'm not talking about you, but your brother-in-law. The one with the surname Zhang, who is particularly annoying. If I hadn't seen you, I wouldn't have remembered him." Gu Mingde felt very strange at this time, as if he was participating in a play that had been rehearsed long ago. He didn't need to worry about the plot at all. He just needed to appear on time and everything would be arranged. He had already made preparations to reveal Zhang Guangzong's cheating at the banquet. He thought that even if he would be labeled as informing on relatives and friends, he would suppress Zhang Guangzong. But he didn't expect that God had his own plans. Someone took the initiative to come forward and perfectly picked Gu Mingde out of this matter. That Zhang, who was drunk and boasted outside, said that if the college examination was also presided over by Lord Go, he would have become a scholar long ago. He wanted to be a scholar by relying on a few stinky money he got from who knows where, but, the drunkard said loudly. Magistrate Wu looked at the drunkard as if he was looking at a treasure. If he had not received a secret order from his superiors, he would not have racked his brains to find a handle on the previous magistrate at the end of the year. Although Guang'an County is located in a remote area, the court's party struggles still affected it. Magistrate Wu was just a small role in the eyes of those in the capital, but his predecessor, Magistrate Go, was promoted step by step after leaving Guang'an County. Now there are rumors that Lord Go will take up an important position soon after the new year. In the officialdom, important positions are like a piece of fat meat, and everyone is trying their best to take a bite. If someone helps Lord Go to take the position, naturally someone will try their best to pull him down. The court attaches great importance to education, and the crime of cheating in the imperial examination is much more serious than corruption. It is precisely because the crime is too serious that there are many stakeholders on the same rope, and many locals will keep silent even if they know about it. If it weren't for drinking too much, it is estimated that no one would bring this matter to the table. As the county magistrate's confidant, Master Chen had such a big handle on the former county magistrate Go. They were all outsiders and didn't care whether it would involve the locals of Guang'an County. Zongde, are you familiar with your brother-in-law? Master Chen tried to dig something out of Gu Mingda's mouth first. Gu Mingda frowned slightly and said, Mr. Chen, to be honest, my wife and he are not from the same mother. After my mother-in-law passed away, my father-in-law remarried and gave birth to Zhang Guangzong. When my wife was young, her family lacked food and clothing, and she had many grudges with her stepmother, so there was a gap between the siblings. Master Chen heard the implication of Gu Mingda's words, which was to draw a clear line with Zhang Guangzong. Zongde, don't worry, whether your brother-in-law cheated or not, this matter will not implicate you. Master Chen first gave Gu Mingda a reassurance. Gu Mingda pretended to be relieved and said, Mr. Chen, I actually don't think my brother-in-law is the kind of person who would do such a thing. Although he strives for fame and fortune, he is always timid. When Master Chen heard this, his eyes lit up. Being timid is good. As long as you are scared, you will spit out everything. Gu Mingda is well aware of the principle that the more you say, the more mistakes you will make. He will not take the initiative to say bad things about Zhang Guangzong, but will only say some facts that are not in his favor. It's pitiful to say that he has been in a difficult situation recently. He went to the capital city, and his wife ran away with someone. He stayed in the town for a few days, was beaten up, and extorted a sum of money. The excitement on Master Chen's face was about to overflow. He was timid and had a bad life. Such a fragile person would easily get his testimony. Not to mention what he had done, even if he had not done it, he would probably admit it. At this time in Qingshui village, in the Zhang family's house, Zhang Guangzong was lying on the bed, his eyes were empty, and I don't know what he was thinking. Cai Posa walked in from outside and said to her son, Guangzong, do you still have money? Jinbei wants to eat meat, and this child hasn't eaten meat for a long time. The first year that the Zhang family adopted Niu Niu was the happiest year in Zhang Guangzong's life. Not only did his wife, who had been infertile for many years, become pregnant, but he also picked up a ginseng in the mountains. He used the money from selling ginseng to build a house, which was actually a rumor he deliberately spread to the outside world. How could the koi enter the house and only get a ginseng? There is an abandoned temple in Daking Mountain. He dug up a jar of gold and silver under the roots of a tree outside the temple. But no matter how much money you have, there will be a time to spend it all. In the past few years, he has not been productive, and he has been only concerned with eating and drinking all day long. He has been blackmailed one after another, and he has only spent money and not earned anything. Finally, he has reached the point of being penniless. He wants to eat meat, and I want to eat too, Zhang Guangzong said viciously. Cai Pose felt sorry for her grandson and wanted to persuade him again. Zhang Guangzong became impatient and said, "Why do you feel sorry for him? It's hard to say whether he is my biological son or not." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 89. When Granny Cai heard this for the first time, she froze on the spot. Although Jinbao is the child of Zhang Guangzong and Xiao Cai, she has been raised by her grandmother for a long time. Her son has been married for many years, and she only has such a precious son. It can be said that Cai almost looks at Jinbao as her eyes. She wished she would give up Jinbao even if she had her own life. Suddenly learning that her son said such things, she clutched her chest and could hardly stand up straight. But Zhang Guangzong didn't realize that something was wrong with his mother at all. After he said these words, he couldn't get rid of the thought in his mind. The more he looked at it, the more he felt that Jinbao didn't look like him. "Mom, who do you think Jinbao looks like?" Zhang Guangzong suddenly asked. Cai's body was trembling slightly. She pulled a chair aside and sat down with a pale face. I don't know, it's impossible. How could Jinbao not be my grandson?" Granny Cai muttered intermittently. Zhang Guangzong's eyes were empty, and a lot of faces flashed through his mind. These people were all men who had been relatively close to Xiao Cai in the past. His eyes suddenly fell on a plate of peanuts not far away. "Do you still remember who gave these peanuts?" Zhang Guangzong asked. Granny Cai's lips trembled slightly. I remember, it seemed to be sent by Yangzi, and he said it was for Jinbao greeting." Yangzi was no one else, he was the eldest son of Cai's sister, 1 year older than Zhang Guangzong. Li Daong was a cousin to both Zhang Guangzong and Xiao Cai. Zhang Guangzong's voice was as ethereal as a burst of smoke. "Mom, do you think Jinbao and Yangzi are very similar?" Granny Cai suddenly became excited. Jinbao in the yard was still rolling around on the floor, yelling for meat. The mother and son in the room looked through the window at the ferocious face of the child. The more they looked at it, the more they felt that the child looked like Li Daong. Their eyes are almost identical, both have double eyelids. "Look at that tall nose. I have a flat nose. How could I give birth to a son with a high nose? It's not easy for every household, but he can still squeeze out snacks and send them to him. Peanuts are a good thing. Why don't you keep them and press the oil at home?" When he sent the peanuts, he mentioned by name that he wanted to give them to Jinbao. A flash of pain flashed in Zhang Guangzong's eyes. Cai's current discomfort is even worse than that of her son. But in fact, no matter who gives food to someone, most of them will say polite words such as "give the child a greedy mouth." As for the similarities between Jinbao and Li Daong, in fact, upon closer inspection, Li Daong, Jinbao, and even Xiao Cai are very similar. It is said that the nephew is like his uncle, and Zhang Guangzong is not like his uncle, but Li Daong is almost the same as his uncle, and their uncle happens to be Xiao Cai's biological father. Due to the intricate blood relationship between this large family, it is actually difficult to determine whether Jinbao is Zhang Guangzong's biological child. But once a seed is planted in my heart, some things become uncontrollable. Zhang Guangzong listened to the noisy noise in the yard, stood up, rushed over with a quick stride, and kicked Jinbao. Jinbao was rolling on the ground and pretending to cry, but when he was really beaten, he was frightened and recalled in pain the beating his father had given him a few months ago. This is the second time he has been beaten today. He shrank back and burst into earth-shattering cries, "Milk! Milk!" But Granny Cai, who was summoned by him frantically and was almost always at his call, rarely made any sound this time. Cai huddled in the room, tears streaming down her face. "You little bastard, how dare you eat meat? How dare you think about it?" Zhang Guangzhong cursed. The young Jinbei was lying on the ground, looking up from the bottom, and felt as if he was facing a huge mountain. The only thing he could do was to keep shouting, "Grandma, save me, Daddy is going to beat me to death." The more he yelled, the harder Granny Cai cried. After all, she had been raising her for 4 years. She didn't say she could just let go of her, but no matter how much she couldn't bear it, Granny Cai didn't get up to stop her. I don't know how long the beating lasted, but the sound in the yard finally stopped. Perhaps because he was tired, Zhang Guangzhong picked up the child from the ground and threw it into the woodshed. "Little bastard, from now on you just stay in the woodshed," Zhang Guangzhong scolded fiercely. Jinbei curled up in a ball in the corner of the woodshed. He had been carefully cared for by everyone in the family, but now he realized that the woodshed was so cold. Is this really a place where people live? Will I die if I keep living here? Niu Niu's face suddenly appeared in Jinbao's mind. There are also Niu Niu's beddings, piled dirtily in the corner. Because no one has cleaned them for too long, and the woodshed is leaking, there is an astonishing sour smell. Jinbei felt pain even if he moved, and fell asleep in a daze. "Second uncle is back, second uncle is back." The child's voice was full of excitement. The carriage that Gu Mingda was riding in entered the Gu family's yard, along with half a carriage full of New Year's gifts. The children of the Gu family all gathered around Gu Mingda. Second uncle, is the county fun? Second uncle, you have been gone for a long time, and we have been thinking about you at home." The children were chirping, surrounding Gu Mingda like a group of little sparrows waiting to be fed. Gu Mingda was not unfamiliar with the situation at all, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Just as he was about to open his mouth to divide the things, he saw Mrs. Gu walking out and said, "Second brother, put your things with me first. I have something to ask you, you say." When Gu Mingda heard this, he felt surprised. After all, I have never been the kind of old lady who likes to occupy things, but in front of so many people, he still did it. After Zhang Yuniang and others helped move things into the house, Mrs. Gu kicked out all the adults and children in other rooms. "Mom, what do you have to say? Are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere?" Gu Mingda asked with concern. He was afraid that something was wrong with my mother's body. Mrs. Gu was very impressed by her son's filial piety. She shook her head with a smile and said, "It's okay. What can I do?" Facing her son's puzzled gaze, Mrs. Gu continued, "Mom, it's not worth it for you. How much have you paid for this family? I don't know how many benefits the 3 bedrooms have received from you, but they are all greedy." When Gu Mingda heard these words, he understood that something must have happened during the few days he left home. He turned to look at Zhang Yuniang. Zhang Yuniang sighed and said, "The third younger brother and sister still have to make up for the trouble caused by the mother's family." After hearing the cause and effect, Gu Mingda was not surprised at all. "Mom, I'm not posting these things for my third brother and sister. I'm doing this for my third brother and the children." "Why should you worry about her words?" Gu Mingda comforted her mother. But the more he understands the righteousness, the more Mrs. Gu can't help but complain for him, saying, "Listen to what that bastard said. He gave away things, but in the end he still has to face Xiao Fubao instigating, saying that you, the second uncle, have neglected your duty." Gu Mingda still insisted, "Mom, third brother, that's not what I think." Mrs. Gu glared at him and said, "Two kinds of people cannot sleep under the same bed. No matter how good the relationship between you brothers is, if this woman talks about it in your ears for many years, the friendship will eventually be ruined." Gu Mingda was most afraid of his mother's anger now, so he quickly comforted her, Okay, mother, you are right, whatever you want to do, I will just cooperate with you." First update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 90. Mrsku's eyes fell on a room full of New Year's gifts and asked, which ones are for the eldest bedroom and which ones are for the third bedroom. Gu Mingde pointed casually, and Zhang Yunian quickly picked it out. At the urging of the old lady, even the things for the children were placed separately on one side. As soon as the second couple walked out of the old lady's house, Chen Chunyua and Lu Ernie and their children surrounded them. Chen Chunyua pushed Gu Daya, and Gu Daya took 2 steps forward, but her mouth was pursed tightly. Chen Chunyua saw that Gu Daya was not willing to ask for things directly, so she spoke for her daughter, his second uncle. These days when you are not around, our eldest daughter talks about you every day. Last night she even cried thinking about our second uncle. Gu Daya turned around and said angrily, the eldest brother and the second brother also miss the second uncle, why don't you ask the eldest brother to tell you? A child can also feel the favoritism of her parents. She also knows that her parents pulled her here to use her as a raft and ask for things from Gu Mingde, so naturally she is not happy. Chen Chunyua gritted her teeth and stared at her daughter. Yes, mother, why don't you call me Xiaobao? Xiaobao misses her second uncle even more. Gu Xiao also followed her sister's words and looked at Lu Ernie. The 2 sisters had a bad relationship and often fought, but their daughters had a good relationship. Now the 2 little girls are facing their patriarchal mother. Chen Chunyua and Lu Ernie were about to get angry when they saw their rebellious daughter, but Mrsku's scolding came from the room, those with shallow eyes, get out of here. Perhaps it was because the family separation was so violent that the last bit of tenderness that Mrsku had for her 2 daughters-in-law was taken away. When she looked at her 2 sons now, she felt they were no longer as pleasing to the eye as before. Lu Ernie was still shameless, so she came up to her and asked, Mom, everything is in your house, how about you share it in the future? Mrsku nodded and even pointed at something, indicating that it was what Gu Mingde originally wanted to give to them. Lu Ernie's eyes lit up immediately and she said, Mom, our third child has always been the most filial to you. Our 2 children are also young, and they like grandma the most. You can't be partial. When Chen Chunyua saw that her sister-in-law had the upper hand, she immediately became anxious and rushed to say something nice. Mrsku was annoyed by what she heard and said, whether I want to share the things with you or not, I'll wait until the boss and the third child come back. When Chen Chunyua and Lu Ernie heard this, they immediately went out in a hurry. Now that the new year was coming, there was nothing important besides preparing for the new year. Without any hesitation, they dragged their men back from outside. Mrsku's house was once again crowded with people, but all the good things seemed to have been collected by the old lady. Mom, everyone is here, you can share the things, Lu Ernie urged. Not only are there 3 family members waiting to take advantage of Gu Mingde, but her parents are also waiting for this holiday gift to go out and show off. How can they not be in a hurry? Mrsku didn't even bother to glare at her, but asked Gu Lao-san, Lao-san, you have always been confused about big things and shrewd about small things. Do you know how much you know about your family background? Ever since Lu Ernie instigated Gu Xiaobao behind her back that day, Mrsku had been thinking about it for several days. She now understood that if Lu Ernie didn't suppress it, Gu Lao-san's family would only drift further and further away from Gu Mingde. She gave birth to 3 sons, only Gu Mingde was the most promising. The separation of the family was equivalent to creating a crack in the relationship between the brothers. If Lu Ernie was allowed to continue, Gu Lao-san would really be doomed. Mom, Ernie is in charge of our 3rd bedroom house. I just need to be able to stutter, Gu Lao-san said with a smile. You took 20 taels of silver from the separation, how much do you have now? Asked Mrsku. It was about money. Lu Ernie was more anxious than anyone else and said first, why did Mom suddenly ask this? Is it because my second brother is short of money? He is rushing to take the exam next year and needs money. Why did he buy so many things so lavishly? Mrsku almost laughed angrily when she saw Gu Lao-san becoming nervous to the naked eye. Lu Ernie was inciting Gu Lao-san to be on guard against her own mother, in front of her face. Who knew how serious the commotion was behind the scenes? Third brother, ask yourself, when did your second brother take your money? It's always been you who benefited from him. When did he take advantage of you? Asked Mrsku. Gu Lao-san fell silent immediately after hearing this. Lu Ernie whispered, just because you didn't take it before doesn't mean you won't take it in the future. Gu Lao-san looked confused again. Mrsku suddenly felt that she had made a mistake. She should learn from Lu Ernie. Wasn't it just an instigation? Who wouldn't? My ex-son saw that your wife sent money to her parents' family again. Her youngest brother seems to be getting married, but I don't know if he will use your money to marry her. When Gu Lao-san heard this, he jumped up anxiously. Lu Ernie hurriedly said, it's okay, third child, you have to believe me. But Gu Lao-san had already rushed back to his house and started rummaging around frantically. Third brother, the money is not hidden here. I have changed places, you have to believe me. Lu Ernie said hurriedly as she followed behind. Gu Lao-san asked, where is it hidden? Find it for me quickly. If you don't find it, I will never end it with you. Lu Ernie hesitated. Seeing the guilty look on his wife's face, how could Gu Lao-san not understand? He became furious on the spot, waving his fists, and said, you sent them to your parents' house. You don't care about your two children. Lu Ernie was submissive to Mrs. Lu, but when faced with Gu Lao-san, she immediately struck hard. My brother from my mother's side is marrying a daughter-in-law, and she asks for a bride price of 30 taels. What can I do? Do I still have to watch my brother become a bachelor? I have been with you for so many years and have given birth to 2 children. How can I live a good life? You are not in a hurry to find out what you are doing with this money. Gu Lao-san was really stunned on the spot. Before Mrsku could speak, Chen Chunyua, who was watching the show, burst out laughing. Third brother, your brother-in-law is using your money to get a wife. If you had known that the money would be wasted, why not divorce Lu Ernie and directly ask your brother-in-law's daughter-in-law to be your wife? How could you still get a yellow-flowered girl for free? Chen Chunyua joked with a smile. The speaker was unintentional, but the listener was intentional. Gu Lao-san's face was really moved. This time it was Lu Ernie who jumped in and rushed over to scratch Chen Chunyua's face. You shameless nonsense. I can't scratch you to death. Chen Chunyua hurriedly hid behind Boss Gu. Lu Ernie stopped abruptly and managed not to pounce directly on her eldest brother. Chen Chunyua's mouth didn't stop, and her mouth became so mean that it really made people want to beat her to death. Third brother, today my brother-in-law has no money to hire someone, and tomorrow my brother-in-law has no place to live. He is so attracted to your big brick house that he can even send his own secret recipes to his mother's family. Your brothers-in-law's sons are nesting one after another. Disheng, you may have to sell your daughter to someone else's son in exchange for a betrothal gift. Second update.